Dear students, today we are going to talk about biodiversity and its conservation part 1. In this we are going to talk about the introduction to biodiversity, concept of biodiversity, levels of biodiversity, magnitude of biodiversity, patterns of biodiversity distribution. Wide variety of living organisms including plants, animals and microorganisms with whom we share this planet Earth makes the world a beautiful place to live in. Living organisms exist almost everywhere, from the mountain peaks to the ocean depths, from deserts to rainforests. They vary in their habit and behavior, shape, size and color. The remarkable diversity of living organisms forms an inseparable and significant part of our planet. However, the ever-increasing human population is posing serious threats to biodiversity. In 1992, UN Earth Summit defined biodiversity as the variability among the living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine and other aquatic ecosystems and the ecological complexes of which they are a part. Here you can see in this image, on the left side is the freshwater ecosystem, in the middle is the marine ecosystem, and on the right side is the terrestrial ecosystem. Biodiversity includes diversity within the species, between the species and ecosystems of a region. It reflects the number of different organisms and the relative frequencies in an ecological system and constitutes the most important functional component of a natural ecosystem. It helps to maintain ecological processes, create soil, recycle nutrients, influence climate, degrade waste and control diseases. It provides an index of the health system of an ecosystem. The survival of human race depends on the existence and well-being of all life forms, plants and animals in the biosphere. The concept of biodiversity was introduced by Walter Rosen in 1986. Whose image is given below. Biodiversity is the assemblage of different life forms. Each species is adapted to live in its specific environments. The changes in climatic conditions are reflected in the distribution and pattern of biodiversity on our planet. The number of species per unit area declines as we move from tropics towards the poles. The tundra and the taiga of the northern Canada, Alaska, Northern Europe and Russia possess less than 12 species of trees. When you take the temperate forests of the United States, they have around 30 to 35 species of trees. While you take the tropical forest of Panama, have over 110 species of trees in a relatively small area. The levels of biodiversity. Edward Wilson, whose image is given below, between 1929 and 2021, popularized the term biodiversity to describe diversity at all levels of biological organization, from populations to biomes. There are three levels of biodiversity: genetic diversity, species diversity, community or ecosystem diversity. Genetic diversity, when we take, it refers to the differences in the genetic makeup, the number and the types of genes between distinct species and to the genetic variation within a single species. Also covers genetic variation between distinct populations of the same species. Genetic diversity can be measured using a variety of molecular techniques. India has more than 50,000 genetic variants of paddy and 1,000 variants of mango. Variation of genes of a species increases with diversity in size and habitat. It results in the formation of different races, varieties and subspecies. For some reference here, few genetic variants of rice of South India is given here. Kaiviral Samba, Mappillai Samba, Kichli Samba, Karuppu Kavuni, Kuliyadichan, Katiyanam, Palakkadar Matta, Ziraga Samba, CO45, CR1009. Ravolfia vomitaria, a medicinal plant growing in different ranges of the Himalayas, shows differences in the potency and concentration of the active ingredient reserpine due to genetic diversity. Genetic diversity helps in developing adaptations to changing environmental conditions. Genetic diversity in an animal population due to a slight beneficial differences or variation in the genetic constitution is shown in the image of a mouse. Here you can see the genetic diversity in a whole population where there are minor differences in the genetic constitution which results in the expression of a different variation in the mouse. Species diversity. Species diversity refers to the variety in number and richness of the species in any habitat. The number of species per unit area at a specific time is called species richness, which denotes the measure of species diversity. Here you can see the species diversity where the species diversity in a coastal earthwood ecosystem is seen where there are different fauna and flora that are seen here. The Western Ghats have greater amphibian species diversity than the Eastern Ghats. The more the number of species in an area, the more is the species richness. The three indices of diversity are given here, like the alpha diversity, beta diversity and gamma diversity. Alpha diversity, it is measured by counting the number of taxa, usually the species within a particular area, community or ecosystem. Here in this image you can see community A shows about 5 different shapes indicating the 5 different species. In community B you can see the B has a higher alpha diversity where there are 5 different shapes, that means 5 different species. In community C you can see there are only 3 different species. Each different shape represents a different microbial species here. Beta diversity, it is a species diversity between 2 adjacent ecosystems and is obtaining by comparing the number of species unique to each of the ecosystem. Here you can see the shapes of the different moss species 1, moss species 2 and moss species 3, and here the ecosystem is the mountain slope. You can see in the left side image there is high beta diversity which helps in comparing the beta diversity of the 2 habitats in the mountain slopes. In the right side you can see there is only one single type of or variety of species present on the mountain slope, thus showing low beta diversity. Gamma diversity, it refers to the diversity of the habitats over the total landscape or geographical area. You can see here the complete landscape or geographical area which is represented by gamma, which includes the entire diversity of the alpha as well as the beta groups. Here in this image you can see the alpha diversity of a community where a single area is taken. A beta diversity is a comparison between the 2 alpha diversities or communities where the variation in the species is taken into consideration. In a gamma diversity, the entire landscape or the region or the entire ecosystem is taken into consideration with different types of alpha and beta diversities. Now community or ecosystem diversity. Community or ecosystem diversity is the variety of habitats, biotic communities and ecological processes in the biosphere. It is the diversity at ecosystem level due to diversity of niches, trophic levels and ecological processes like the nutrient cycles, food webs, energy flow and several biotic interactions. India with its alpine meadows, rainforests, mangroves, coral reefs, grasslands and deserts has one of the greatest ecosystem diversity on earth. Here you can see the ecosystem diversity that is taken across the landscape of an entire region where you can see the lake ecosystem and the terrestrial ecosystem. Magnitude of biodiversity. Biodiversity is often quantified as the number of species in a region at a given time. The current estimate of different species on Earth is around 10 to 30 million. However, we really don't know the exact magnitude of our natural wealth. This is called the taxonomic impediment. So far, about 1.7 million species of microorganisms, animals, and plants have been described. Each year, about 10 to 15,000 new species are identified and published worldwide, of which 75% are invertebrates. The number of undescribed species is undoubtedly much higher. Here in this image, you can see the biodiversity, magnitude and distribution. About 10 million to 30 million species are present on the entire Earth. About 1.7 million species of microbes, plants and animals are seen. About 8 million species of insects alone. 4 lakh viruses, 4 lakh bacteria and 1.5 million fungi are seen on the earth. 2,66,000 plants, 3,000 are exploited, 20 are crops of economic importance. On the right side in the image you can see the different colors representing the different species like the chordates, plants, mollusks, crustaceans, protozoa, insects, algae, arachnids, nematodes, fungi, viruses, bacteria and others. India is very rich in terms of biological diversity due to its unique biogeographical location, diversified climatic conditions and enormous ecodiversity and geodiversity. According to the World Biogeographical Classification, India represents 2 of the major reams, the Paleoarctic and the Indo-Malayan, and 3 biomes, tropical humid forest, tropical dry deciduous forest and warm deserts and semi-deserts. With only about 2.4% of the world's total land surface, India is known to have over 8% of the species of animals that the world holds, and this percentage accounts for about 92,000 known species. India is the 7th largest country in the world in terms of area. India has a variety of ecosystems, biomes with its varied habitats like hills, valleys, plateaus, seashores, mangroves, estuaries, glaciers, grasslands and river basins. Here you can see the image of India with the biodiversity in India. The Himalayas, this majestic range of mountains in the northern India, is the home of diverse range of flora and fauna. Eastern Himalayas is one of the 2 biodiversity hotspots in India. Chilika, this wetland area is protected under the Ramsar Convention. Sundarbans, the largest mangrove forest in India. Western Ghats, one of the 2 biodiversity hotspots in India. Thar Desert, around Gujarat and Rajasthan, the climate and vegetation in this area is in contrast to the Himalayan region. It also reflects different kinds of climates, precipitation, temperature distribution, river flow and soil. India is one of the 17 mega biodiversity countries of the world and has 10 biogeographical zones with characteristic habitat and biota. Here you can see the 10 biogeographical zones of India, where number 1 is the Trans-Himalayas, number 2 is the Himalayas, number 3 is the desert, number 4 is the semi-arid areas, number 5 is the Western Ghats, number 6 is the Deccan Plateau and Peninsula, Gangetic Plain is number 7, 8 are the coasts of India, and 9 is the Northeast India, and 10 are the islands, the Andaman and the Nicobar. The world is currently undergoing a very rapid loss of biodiversity, comparable with the great mass extinction events that have previously occurred only 5 or 6 times in the Earth's history. This was found out by the World Wildlife Fund WWF. Now let us move on to the patterns of biodiversity distribution. The distribution of plants and animals is not uniform around the world. Organisms require different sets of conditions for their optimum metabolism and growth. Within this optimal range, habitat, a large number and type of organisms are likely to occur, grow and multiply. Their habitat conditions are determined by their latitudes and the altitudes. When you take the latitudinal and altitudinal gradients, temperature, precipitation, distance from the equator, that is called the latitudinal gradient, altitude, that is the height from the sea level, altitudinal gradient, are some of the factors that determine biodiversity distribution patterns. The most important pattern of biodiversity is latitudinal gradient in diversity. This means that there is an increasing diversity from the poles to the equator. Diversity increases as one moves towards the temperate zones and reaches maximum at the tropics. Thus, tropics harbor more diversity than temperate or polar regions. especially between the latitudes of 23.5 degrees north and 23.5 degrees south, that is the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn. Harsh conditions exist in temperate areas during the cold seasons, while very harsh conditions prevail for most of the year in the polar regions. Colombia, located near the equator around 0 degrees, has nearly 1,400 species of birds, while New York at 41 degrees north has 105 species, and Greenland, which is at 71 degrees north, has only 56 species. India, with much of its land area in the tropical latitudes, is a home for more than 1,200 species of birds. Thus, it is evident that the latitude increases the species diversity. Here in this image, you can see the longitude in the x and the latitude vertically. When we study, we come to know from the polar regions, the species diversity is very minimal or less. And as we move towards the equator, the maximal species diversity occurs. And there is richness in the species diversity along the equatorial regions called the tropical regions between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. Decrease in species diversity occurs as one ascends a high mountain due to drop in the temperature. Temperature decreases at 6.5 degrees centigrade per kilometer above mean sea level. Here you can see the vegetation zonation in the mountains when we go from below the deciduous forest which has trees, needle trees forest. Beyond that there is a dwarf bushes. Then the arm meadows. Above that are the open grasslands. Above that are the cushion plants. Then we see the mosses and the lichens just below the barren rocks, which is the top of the mountains. Thus the barren rocks are less with vegetation, whereas the plateaus and the plains have more vegetation. The reasons for the richness of biodiversity in the tropics are warm tropical regions between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn on either side of the equator possess congenial habitats for living organisms. Environmental conditions of the tropics are favorable not only for speciation but also for supporting both variety and number of organisms. The temperatures vary between 25 to 35 degrees centigrade, a range in which most metabolic activities of the living organisms occur with ease and efficiency. The average rainfall is often more than 200 mm per year. Climate, seasons, temperature, humidity, photoperiods are more or less stable and encourage both variety and numbers, rich resource and nutrient availability. Here in this image you can see of the earth that the diversity is more between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, which has appropriate or optimal temperature, optimal weather conditions, optimal heat and light from the sun, and optimal rainfall, which helps in more biodiversity of the organisms. Mean sea level, what is MSL? Is an average level of one or more of Earth's oceans or seas, from which heights such as elevations may be measured. As we travel by train, we notice the names of stations on big yellow signboards, on which is usually written how much elevated that place is compared to MSL, that is mean sea level. Here you can see in the image, Erode Junction, for example, is about 171.91 meters above the sea level, which is mentioned in the stations. Species area relationships. German naturalist and geographer Alexander von Humboldt, whose image is given below, explored the wilderness of South American jungles and found that within a region the species richness increased with increasing area, but up to a certain limit. The relationship between the species richness and the area for a wide variety of taxa like the angiosperms, plants, birds, bats, freshwater fishes turned out to be the rectangular hyperbola. On a logarithmic scale, the relationship is a straight line described by the equation log S is equal to log C plus Z log A, where S is the species richness, A is the area, Z is the slope of the line called the regression coefficient. C is equal to the y-intercept. You can see here the graph of species and area relationship. Normally, when the log S is equal to log C plus Z log A, the line is straight. And when we take the S is equal to CA to the power Z, then the line is a curved line. Regression coefficient Z generally has a value of 0.1 to 0.2 regardless of the taxonomic group or region. However, in case of the species area relationship, in very large areas like the entire continents, the slope of the line appears to be much steeper. The Z value is in the range of 0.6 to 1.2. For example, in case of fruit-eating birds called frugivorous birds and mammals in the tropical forests of different continents, the slope is found to be a steeper line of 1.15. So today in Biodiversity and its Conservation Part 1, we discussed about the introduction to biodiversity, concept of biodiversity, levels of biodiversity, magnitude of biodiversity, and patterns of biodiversity distribution. So thank you. Kindly subscribe, like, share and comment to channel readmedprep Academy. Kindly register for UG and PG NEET type MCQs in our website www.readmedprepacademy.com. Our Facebook ID is readmedprep Academy. Our email is readmedprepacademy@gmail.com. To join readmedprep Academy, WhatsApp the number given below. Post your questions in the comment box. We will reply with appropriate answers. Our Instagram is readmedprep Academy. So thank you very much.